Um, we'll get started then. Great to have you. Thank you very much. The purpose of this webinar is to share, learn, and cooperate to optimize the response to the coronavirus by HR leaders all over the world. And with us, we have a panel of experienced HR leaders who have been handling this crisis already for 3 months. So there's a lot to learn there. A special thanks to all our panel members who are joining us today to share their learnings. As they have encountered challenges, others are likely to still encounter. And that's exactly the reason why we are here today. Let's learn from the past so we can improve ourselves here and fight this virus with our businesses. So this will be the format of an agenda of the event. For the coming hour, we will start off with a short introduction of the panel and then dive into a set of questions to discuss with the panel. After we've spent about 35 minutes on those set questions, we will dive into the questions of the audience. So feel free to just drop all your questions you already have into the chat box, and our Q&A moderator will handle that and either jump in with questions directly or save them for the last part. Then finally, in conclusion, we were planning to have Nicolien Borggeven, a P&O partner from PwC, to join us with her conclusions and summaries. We're having a few technical difficulties here, so I'm not sure if she will be with us at the end. If not, she will be listening and she will write her conclusions and share with us, also with a few practical actions to take focused on the European market. Yeah, so the questions we will be handling are general questions, questions about communication, working location, employee engagement, and of course, long-term effect and preparation. Regarding the format, everyone is able to send in questions, as I said, and we will see which questions to handle now or later. Yeah, first some introductions. Let's see, we have in our panel from AIA, we have Florence Chang, who is Director of Talent and Leadership Development for the Hong Kong and Macau area. From the Coca-Cola Company, we have Johnny Xiong, who is joining us. Johnny is HR Director for mainland China and part of the crisis management team these last months. From Hays, we have their Regional Director, Su Wei, joining us from Shanghai. And from PwC, as I mentioned, Nicolien, if we can still have her on board. Let's wait and see. And from Seedlink, Robin will join to share his experiences as a scale-up based in China. Maybe Florence, before we get started, a question for you. What were the first things you did when the news hit? And when was that?
You mean the first thing we did from a personal perspective or company, or you want me to describe as a whole?
Well, personally, maybe just for you, how did it feel? When did it happen, and what did you do?
So when it happened back to January, that by that time, actually many of us didn't know what to react and how to react. So we thought it may be very similar to SARS back to 2003. And without full information that we react differently. Some people went to grocery shop to stock up rice, toilet paper. Some rushed to retailers' online platform to buy masks, surgical masks. But our behavior returned to normal, or we became more calm when we get to know more information.
Yeah.
And we can see the change of mindset and shift of behavior in these few months. And company so when we have more information to share, especially for companies, so when company ask employee to work from home after Chinese New Year holiday, it was the end of January. So when people had more time to think about how to react, then we start to see a more structured approach.
So how long did that take before, you know, when the news started to dig in and when people started to structure the approach?
It take about 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think during the trying time like this, people need to experience themselves and gradually will find a way to handle it.
Yeah. And Johnny, how did you deal with gathering information? Because there's so many sources of information, I can imagine.
Thank you. That's a really good question. I want to echo Florence to start with. At the beginning, I guess it's really all human nature. There are two things. Number one, there's not enough information. Number two, immediately there's over information. There's all kinds of sources of information, and over information sometimes kill information. And at the beginning, doesn't matter if it's lack of information or over information, people are confused. People are panicking, fear spread. I mean, that's just a natural process. We've all gone through it. I think what's important for us, immediately there was for the Coca-Cola system, meaning Coca-Cola company and our bottling partners, there is a IMCR mechanism kicked off right away. Different key stakeholders immediately get on a social media platform where we began to throw all kinds of information into the same group, cluster them, discuss them, filter, and saying what's relevant, what's not, where's the new development in your area, because as you can imagine, Coca-Cola operates in all kinds of environments, cities, rural areas. So we got probably more complete information than many other companies. So that cross system group became very effective in organizing, sorting out information, and with an agreement, then take that information back to its different either legal entities or regional or organizations there to communicate as they see appropriate, because at different pockets of China, things were also very differently at the very beginning. Then secondly, at the Coca-Cola company itself, we also immediately started a BU team doing the same thing, but multiple layers. We began to filter out government information from multi-functions. We have the government relations, of course, and then we have the local environment, health and safety people who are also handling a part of it. HR, usually we're not a core IMCR team member. Immediately, because this is so human related, we become a key driver of that group. So there's multiple layers what we do. Also, we keep a very strong network with our peer companies. We learn from what they do, how they react, and what they've learned through both online and offline interactions, and also from where we see there's some information are clearly on the table in the media, and other informations are being discussed in closed doors and through heavy debates. Thirdly, we actually have a very, I must say, we have a very disciplined organization. I never thought that before. We actually have a daily questionnaire. We collect information from our associates also to understand what they're experiencing, where they are, because we are spread all around China for Chinese New Year. That survey itself, we call it a health and safety survey. We ask people to complete that every day. And at the end, there was an open-ended question. Basically, at least originally we thought people would just ask questions, but no, actually people treat that with a very open mindset. They put in what they observe, their situation, their concerns, what they've learned. It's very interesting. That in itself helped us tremendously. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Johnny. And just a quick question also, Sue. So quarantine for your team. How did you handle that? And were there any members of your team that got sick, for example?
Yeah, so I think to echo what Johnny was saying, so I run our Shanghai business, which is the headquarters essentially for China. So as soon as the outbreak went out, I think end of January, we had to put together teams and we had to, prepare in case that we would need to work from home. The issue with us is that we are a recruitment company, so we're essentially a database company, and we're not really equipped to work from home because of data security, information, etc. So the first thing we had to do was, for us, we had to increase our buy right away on technologies such as Microsoft Word. We had to increase, say, our buys on all these ad space. At the same time, it was putting together rules for our staff because, again, none of them have experienced work from home in the past. So when are they online? Is there a team meeting? What are they supposed to be doing on a daily basis? How do we track that they're actually working? Those are all things, again, that we don't have prior, policies to work off of, and we had to make the decisions fairly quick locally, and that was difficult. And then on that's for the workspace efficiency, but there's also the emotional bit. So setting up a hotline so that our HR actually became the key person in this, where the consultants in our business and all the staff would be able to call her should they have any emotional issues, difficulties, and we can sort, because we had actually 4 different members who were stuck in Hubei, and they were in the epicenter of the entire crisis. And actually, up until this month, they haven't been released from Hubei, the province. So I think it's making sure that working from home, actually, we're giving them the resources to do so. We're tracking their KPI to ensure they're actually working. And then lastly, just getting to, understand how they're feeling at this moment in time, and really reassuring them that the company will support them through this.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. It's really tough for those team members and colleagues that are still in the outbreak area. I can imagine that's challenging. We'll dive in on the remarks that you made on making it practically work with people working from home, tracking performance, things like that. Robin, just a question for you to get started as well. What were the toughest questions that you got from your team? Because people look at their leader, right? So what's happening here? What kind of questions did you get?
Yeah, so sometimes as leaders, we're expected to have crystal balls when we really can only make our best guesses. You get questions about what are we going to do, what the situation's like. There's a whole lot of questions around how do we cut costs, how do we get past a certain phase. I think in this context, doing a lot of research was what really helped me in this sense. In Asia, we had a very interesting case that happened, about 17 years ago, which was SARS. So you could track, how SARS played out over the course of the outbreak. And then another thing that I looked at was the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918, to kind of guess how these things might unfold over time. So really, it's about equipping ourselves with information because there's so much noise out there, just like Johnny mentioned. How do you distinguish what's noise, what's truth, and what's reality? Nobody knows. Even the best epidemiologists don't know this idea of something called R naught, or how spreadable this disease is not just intrinsic quality of the virus itself. It really comes down to a mix of the virus plus social interaction. So the faster that we can help understand that, the faster that we can get transmissibility, hygiene, all these things out to our staff. It helps to communicate the sense of unity and really getting forward of what we're going to do next. So lots of questions, probably more than we want to cover in this space, but equip yourselves with information, do the research, not necessarily just listening to some of our leaders from different countries say different things, and sometimes it's true, sometimes it's for political interest. The reality is you have to do the research yourself.
Yeah. Thanks, Robin. So let's get started with a few preset questions. In the meantime, the audience can put their questions in the chat box on your right-hand side. Our Q&A moderator, Rina, will look at them and throw them in if they're very relevant for the moment, or we will handle them later in the webinar in the third part. So don't be shy, share your questions, please. So first question, maybe for you, Florence. How would you describe the situation now versus early this year?
We can see a change of mindset and shift of behavior in these few months. So at the very beginning, everyone was in a reactive and panic mode because we didn't have enough information. So we didn't know what to do. So as I shared earlier, that when we didn't have enough information, what individual would normally do is we rush to buy grocery, to stock up toilet paper, rice, things like that. And then company asked employees to work from home. And then, but however, without very detailed information, because working at home is a new practice in Hong Kong. So, and many of the companies don't have this policy. So when you ask people to work from home, they will ask lots of questions. For example, how do we being track on our attendance? Do I need to report to my manager on a daily basis? Do I need to turn on my camera when we meet, virtually? And then when people have more time to experience, then gradually they will find a way how to respond to that. And there are some precautionary steps that most company and people we do in Hong Kong. And I think these steps help us to contain the cases in a very low rate. So there are 6 things that we do, starting from 3 months up until now. We are still doing these 6 things. First, we substantially reduce social gathering. Second, we will place face-to-face meeting by video conferencing, phone calls, webinars. Then thirdly, we maintain an appropriate social distancing when face-to-face interaction is a must. Fourth, most important, we wear a surgical mask whenever we're leaving home. So that means we're putting on masks in office, in transportation vehicles, meeting people outside. And then we also maintain a good personal hygiene. So we are establishing a new habit by not touching our eyes, our mouth and nose. And if we have to, then we make sure that we wash our hands beforehand. And then also many companies provide surgical masks and sanitizer to the employees, because these 2 things are the most commonly requested things demanded by the employees. So if companies don't provide that they express their opinion that they don't feel comfortable coming to the office.
Yeah. And anything to add from the other panel members regarding this topic? Anything that's totally different? Does it feel like a very improved situation now?
I'll have something to add. Robin here. Quickly, I would echo what Florence said about wearing masks. I think in the US, the CDC has recommended that you don't wear masks. I think mostly because of a supply challenge, because the logistics in the US are really poor. Also, it's not in the habit of most Western countries to wear masks. You might even be looked at as if you're an alien wearing masks. Many of my friends that aren't in the US or abroad, they get ridiculed for wearing masks. But if you look at the countries that have a really good mask policy, like Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, all these countries had previous experience with SARS. And by and large, those are the countries that have dealt the best with the situation. So the situation has improved dramatically in Shanghai. I recently got word that Hubei province is opening up and people from there are actually coming back abroad to Shanghai in the larger cities. So what that means is the government feels that it's contained enough to allow these people to move out of their lockdown cities. So it has worked, things are returning to normal. And this is much, much faster than I thought it would be.
That's a great positive note, Robin. Thanks. Maybe to be clear for many people, what is the function of the mask?
So there's functions. The first function would be that you want to limit the aerosol spread if you do have it. So the first, if you have a mask on, it's going to limit the amount of propulsion of the aerosol particles that can stay, just because of the electromagnetic properties. They can stay airborne for quite some time. Now there's some debate as to whether having a mask, especially if worn improperly, will keep it from coming into your area of your respiratory tract. But most of this is done through aerosol droplets, and those droplets are quite large. The virus itself is about 1 micron. The N95 masks are about 3 microns in size, but if you think they have to be coated in water to really move, the chances of a water droplet coming through a 3 micron hole is very low. So if you look at, again, the evidence suggests, looking at the countries that have a really wide mask policy, that it does work.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so in Hong Kong, so 99% of our population, when we go out to work every day, 99.9% we wear masks.
Yeah, that's.
If I may add, with all that true, very true, masks also provide, remember, depending on the different culture of the societies, in our side of the world, that masks create a sense of security and keep people calmer, right? They know they're protected, and they're also, in case they're not well, other people around them are protected. So throughout, let's say between February to March, towards the end of that, when the mask productions are coming back, we were able to purchase extra masks for all of our associates' families. And when we give extra masks to the family, that became the biggest engagement activity that we could do.
Yeah.
So that sense of we care and the sense of security also help people during this time, besides its real physical applications.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. There's a question from the audience. Rina?
Yeah, the audience is getting warmed up here. So a few questions. One is from Brazil, steered towards Johnny. What kind of actions did you take to prevent contamination in your logistics and commercial teams? Especially because at this level, people are very exposed, right, to contamination due to the contact with customers and people in general. And I have some more to come, but maybe Johnny, this one is for you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Yes, thank you. It's a very, very good question, especially we are in the food and beverage industry. There are multi-layers. One thing is our supply chain is immediately, it was overly heavily protected with all the right measures. As we already have those measures within our manufacturing capacities, that was critical. Secondly, our commercial teams immediately shift from visiting our customers, shops and major customers. They immediately shift to calls and virtual meetings. That really impacted our business, but gave us two things: at that level, a much higher priority on the employees' safety versus at the time equally important, but a lower priority at the time, business continuity. So of course, we need to suffer a bit on that, but also that personal protection equipment right away, where we have headquarters, better stock, we will immediately ship them to the people in the field, the commercial teams in the field. But of course, especially in the earlier stage, when the rest of the world are still calmer, we immediately get supplies from, we have central global supply to help us to supply China. So these are the few things that we help our commercial team. But production of concentrates, we were able to supply it with a limit, but actually all the shipping to to our customers and then to our end consumers become very difficult for at least a month and a half.
Thanks, Johnny. Rina, maybe one more question now, and then I'd like to go back into the flow.
Yeah. One more question. So I think Florence mentioned that there was initially a panic mode, right? How do you get your teams to get back to a normal work mode mindset? Meaning, how do you keep them from feeling like your work responsibilities didn't go anywhere? You're not on an extended Chinese New Year holiday break.
So I think, first of all, as a leader, we have to admit that it's normal for people to get panic. And do not blame people who overreact because they don't have the experience to experience before. So I think one thing that we did quite good in the company is that, so same as Johnny, what he shared previously, that as a company, we provide a regular update on the confirmed cases, especially those happen in our agency force, because we are an insurance company that we have our own staff and we also have insurance agency. So we share that information, and also we provide a regular update once per week about how to establish a personal hygiene, and then share with them with doctors' advice how to deal with the impact to, the emotional impact, and also how we deal with that. And then we provide the surgical masks and also sanitizers to employees, so they know there are support from the company. So for my team member, if there's a need for them to work from home, that they feel free to. So it's not required to ask permission from me. So I think the leader support is very important. And then we also relax a little bit on the performance.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Florence. Yeah, so moving on to the next topic, communication. We already spoke about that a bit, Johnny. You mentioned it. Yeah, maybe some other lessons to share about communication in the past few months.
Right, thank you. There are a lot of lessons learned in terms of communication. One thing is what I shared about gathering information. Another thing is to keep where we maintained a very open digital platform to continuously have number one, formal communication, one-way push, so people know, which need to be dependable, which need to be sort of in certain rhythm, so people know when certain things are coming, like any work change arrangement, every bi-weekly, there's a big announcement coming out, everybody feel there's a dependable level of communication. And then there are informal communications that are going on at multiple levels, and also how we channel the communication along the way, because as we have all described, that where we are have gone through multiple stages. So where during the panic, the fear spread period, we purposely make sure the tone is so much about we're here, we listen, we're here to help out. So where that provides a sense of security, versus then as soon as it stabilizes, how can we bring people out of that panic mode and kind of create a sense of normal, quote unquote normal, and bring people back to work. So our communications tone changes. How can we recognize the fact that future is now? We talk about virtual working. We built long time for the digital capability to support this, but we're all stuck in office as usual before what all this happened. But the future is just now. Let's live the future now. And then we began to run a virtual daily learning, which was very, very effective. 1 hour every day after lunch. And there's Monday, Wednesday, there were special town halls inviting leaders to talk about, to share their personal challenges or how they see the business, the challenge, the opportunity. Tuesday, Thursday, there's a special capability building session where you learn something different. On a Friday, could be a virtual yoga or a employee assistant program where a psychologist could come in to talk about how you channel your anxiety and then use similar tools to help people around you. So you know that virtual engagement, it has been very critical. Another thing I feel has been important in that is we have many communication channels, and for certain topic, we immediately bring them all together to bring a dedicated channel. And while we're building certain culture within our company, and we link what we communicate to the kind of culture we try to build. For example, as the company is trying to get on a growth momentum, we actually have that caring plus a winning mindset. We bring it together, we win. So it's a channel we open particularly for this to bring to channel the communications. Last but not least, is what we could have done better is the engagement and the communication with people leaders to start with. We've done so, but now we think back, we could have done a lot more because people leaders really in between, they play such a crucial role in every stage. So that is something we could have done a lot more from the start.
Great, thanks, Johnny. Yeah, moving on, also looking at the time a bit. Sue, of course, you know, most of the people started working from home. You already mentioned it a bit. Were there any specific things that you did to optimize this practically, or any other learnings there?
Yeah, I think, again, for us, because we are a recruitment company, it's essentially all about people. It's about our candidates and our clients, and those are people that we cannot see during the work from home period. So like I mentioned, it's about ensuring, like Johnny mentioned, internally, that community is still continually built. People, for example, in Wuhan or people that are in Shanghai still feel that they are involved and they're as one. And I think that's the people engagement side that is very important, especially with our leaders. Their tone of voice, how they set it, how they lead meetings, that will affect the psychology of the people. The practicality of whether or not, say, we run weekly meetings, whether we ask for daily results from each of our consultants in China, those are things that we rolled out. But again, like Florence mentioned, you can't expect everyone to work at the highest efficiency because of distractions or technology capabilities. But I think the learning from this, and I'll add on to Johnny's bit, is that we also have at this point in time, because we work with so many clients, our clients are global clients as well as Chinese clients, and it's about half of our job is also advising them. What do you do in this time if you wanted to interview a candidate? What do you do if you were about to book a flight into China to do a site visit? And half of that is also becomes our job as consultants to, you know, advise and tell them. I think a lot of it is linked to daily communication, setting up KPIs, you know, trial and error as we go, and then realistically putting together sort of like a manual that by the time we ended our work from home period at the end of February, it's actually quite become business as normal.
Okay, wow, that's good to hear. Thanks, Sue. And you know, we already talked a bit about engagement. You covered it now, Sue. Robin, maybe in short, what other things did you do to keep your team engaged? Are there any good ideas, practical tips, creative things to do? Because Johnny mentioned a few things, Sue mentioned a few things. Anything from your end?
just to reiterate a lot of what they said, but maybe in a different way, is be really human. I think you've heard Sue and Johnny talk about, and Florence talk about the fact that, you know, everyone's encumbered by some kind of situation. For those that have kids, my house was a complete disaster zone. Kids are out of school, running all over the place. So really understanding that, you know, all of our lives are turned upside down, and just being, you know, there for everybody, that helps a lot. As far as creative ideas, we did a number of things internally. One thing that Rena pushed forward was having people show their workspaces at home. So we're kind of all in this together, you know, it's all kind of messed up, you know, let's make the best of it. That was one thing that I thought went over really well. Additionally, we created an application, you know, we're a tech company, so we can build things. We built something to help our friends express themselves, similar to what Johnny did with the open-ended questions, but we can actually run analytics on it. So we're able to understand what the whole company thought as one united voice. You know, were they saying positive things? You know, are they well? Are their families well? And that's really good information to know as leadership. And ultimately, you know, as leaders, we have to do our best to stay calm. If we're not calm and we're not chugging forward, no one is calm. Other little elements have been mentioned before, but perhaps not in very direct means, is making sure you're keeping a temperature on every person daily. Not necessarily in a rote way, but really, you know, I really care about you. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Now, how's that going? And then again, just being very understanding. But there's also some benefits. We had, you know, our application basically blew up because everyone's at home. And now one day we had 40,000 applications because everyone's at home. And so there's some interesting elements of working from home as well. One of our clients, you know, got featured on a social media platform, and there was, you know, tons of web traffic from that. So there's little nuances that happen in this time. But yeah, keep human and try to understand what's going on with people to really get them engaged. And also, finally, I would say help them to find different working hours. So maybe it's not going to be 9 to 5, right? Maybe it's going to be 9 to 10, and they're going to have to teach their kids, and then maybe they'll get on before lunch, and then after the kids go to bed. So being understanding about those schedules. That's practically about it.
Okay, thanks, Robin. And Florence, so what was the impact on the performance of the people at AIA, and how did you manage this?
Yeah, the productivity of the performance was affected at the beginning due to the change of work arrangement from office to work from home. So everything, including interviews and meetings, have to be rescheduled, and we need to think of the new ways to engage with candidates and our employees. And for training, that we have to move from the traditional brick and mortar to virtual facilitated discussion, which is a challenge because you have to redesign the delivery method and to engage audience in the air. So because of this, there is an immediate need for my team to master the digital skills, for example, on Zoom or Microsoft Teams meeting within a short period of time. But because not everyone, they have the same ability to learn new skill that fast. So as a manager, I have to give extra patience and understanding to the team. So people will go through various stages. Performance will drop because the attention is turning to the personal life. But the performance will bounce back when they see the support is given by the company with more information to share. So I think as a leader, our responsibility is to give clarity in complexity. And with this, you will start to see the performance will pick up. So in my team or in our company, we start to see the performance is picking up after 3 weeks of the outbreak.
And so after 3 weeks, the performance picked
3
up.
weeks.
Did it
Pick
reach?
up, yes.
Did it reach the normal level, or is it lower or higher?
Not back to normal yet. So it's not back to normal, but you see the decline in the performance. But bounce back, so it's picking up after 3 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. And do you expect it to stay under the normal level, or do you expect it to bounce back to normal?
We expect to bounce back to normal, but having said that, there are some external factors we cannot control, which will affect our business performance. So AIA is in the insurance industry. So if people don't buy medical insurance or life insurance, our business will be affected.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Florence. And Johnny, of course, we all understand that this will hit us hard economically. It has already done that. So in that, from that sense, what type of interventions did you and your company take to manage cash flow positions? Is there anything you can comment on that?
Well, broadly speaking, Coca-Cola Company is a very wide system globally. So when China got hit quite heavily at the beginning, we still have quote unquote the luxury of the rest of the world. And when many of the markets, mature markets are being hit, China is actually recovering. Our last plant in Hubei has just resumed production. Waters and supplies are running down the production line. So that kind of helped us to leverage a bit, where hopefully our newfound growth will help the broader company to strengthen our cash flow position. But it hit all of us nevertheless. So a few measures that we've taken, pretty straightforward, that we need to watch every penny we spend. So we, at every level of the organization, there's a very clear message. Let's be very sensible with every penny we spend. And also we need to fearlessly prioritize. It's not about a cash flow position. It's how can we work prioritizing, because when I say fearlessly prioritizing, that means a lot of things in the old days, we are not able to give up and say, oh, that's important work here and there. We need to invest cash, people, those things need to get stopped, right? And so that help us to be more focused and actually looking at this. If a company position and prioritize properly, when the market gradually recover, you probably come out stronger than actually weaker. I just want to, Florence, want to just joke about it. Actually, in our in Coca-Cola Company, we have a little spread. People who are usually busy when they work home virtually, they're more busy. They work almost 24/7. And then people who are less, usually a little bit relaxed, they're actually more relaxed when they work at home. So that's it. But broadly speaking, when we are slowly, resuming business and both from home and to shifts in the office, we actually discovered a lot of the virtual working improved our efficiency. Many of the teams actually got higher rather than lower. But of course, when it comes to manufacturing, our frontline commercial, many got hit, but many of the teams actually got stronger. Just want to.
Yeah, I'd like to add to Johnny's discussion on opportunities in downturns quickly, and just put some context behind that, because I think it's a really good point and an opportunity for some optimism. If you look at, for example, investment funds, venture capital hedge funds, those that are started in economic downturns vastly outperform those that are started in peak years. And then even companies that have done really well throughout history, companies like Amazon went through the dot-com crash and came out as a behemoth. The same is true of companies like Google, which was founded on the back of the dot-com crash, and even Facebook, which was around the time of the 2008 crash. So the old adage goes that fortunes are made in downturns and harvested at the peaks. So there's always opportunity in these situations to grow and room for optimism despite what might be short-term downturns.
That's a great entrepreneurial mindset, Robin. Thanks for that. Yeah, and maybe in line with Robin and Johnny's remarks. So Sue, we're handling the most urgent challenges now, but we also have to look ahead. So when did you start planning your post-coronavirus strategy? And what are your key findings here? Or have you not done that yet? How are you on that end?
Yeah, so I think we're again a service company, so we're very reliant on our clients, of which about 75% of our clients are Western multinationals. So we started early, I would say in February. So there's two things. One is we first surveyed. So every year Hayes has what we call a salary guide, where we surveyed about 20,000 people to see what the sentiment of the market is next year. So we did this for 2019 with a projection for 2020. And then from February onwards, we did another mini survey just to see what our clients are feeling in terms of sentiment post-virus, or how long do they expect this virus to last and how will it affect their business, because we grow and companies grow. So obviously from the findings, we published it actually just last week. We realized that a lot of companies are either decreasing their headcounts or they're maintaining their headcounts. It's less bright than what it was in 2019, which means we have to plan. That said, for us, that would also mean, again, there's opportunities, right, Robin, in this market. So while, for example, what we're doing right now is we are moving some consultants and teams that may focus on certain areas such as food and beverage, and moving some of them into the brighter areas such as healthcare, technology, digital marketing, those spaces where we expect and our clients have responded that they'll still be looking at top talents in this area and investing in it. Those are the things that we are trying to do. And then at the same time, realistically, it's about also deviating our clientele. So when we were at 65% mostly Western multinationals, we are now looking at developing and growing closer to some of our domestic clients, our Chinese clients that are already increasing their investments both in China as well as overseas. And that's where, again, they'll need top talents from actually Western multinationals. So this is the things that we are already doing. And then again, it's about working closely with our clientele to find out exactly how will this virus impact them in the short term, in the second half.
Yeah. Thanks. Any other remarks and ideas from others?
There may be some questions from the audience here.
Yeah.
So one question relates to the conversation about productivity. I think it was mentioned by Florence that the productivity is the same working from home, or it actually decreased a bit. But the question from the audience is in the experience of the panel, the productivity, is it the same when working from home? And if it increases or decreases, how much? And how do you know? And what do you expect from the market when the situation will start to be normal again?
For whom, Rina?
You can choose. There's no specific.
Okay, I think we heard a bit about this from Florence and already from Johnny. Sue, is there anything you can add to their thoughts?
Yes, so I think the best way for us as a company to track how the market has changed is about job in. So for example, in a certain month, we have data from last year, the year before, that is about job requests opening from our clients. And that generally on a monthly basis is tens of thousands of job ins of mid to senior level roles. And that's a really great reflection of our clients' sentiments about and optimism about the market. That we have seen decrease in the February and March timing.
Sue, sorry to interrupt, Sue, but I think the question was more related to the performance of teams, of your people. So can you zoom in on that a bit?
Yeah, and I think the performance is definitely much lower, and that is really from their KPIs as well as their revenue results. So for the sales force, the biggest KPI is obviously their monthly revenue, and that we have seen I would say a 20 to 30% discount on our regular year-on-year from February to March. That said, we have seen that increase, and we are expecting it to bounce back actually fairly soon in April. And then on a regular, for example, one of our key KPIs is things like meetings, as well as just CV sending to clients. Huge decline, and we again at 20 to 30%. We don't see that increasing for sure working from home.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else something to add to these answers?
Working from home to some employees, including me, I don't like. It's because I like interacting with people. So I like to see people face to face, and sometimes working at home, actually longer hours. So I remember one day I worked until 7:30 in the evening. So my husband asked me, "Are you still working, or can you work? Are you still working, because we are about to have our dinner? So can you please stop working?" So on that day, basically, I start from 9 a.m. until 7:30 in the evening.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's difficult for families as well. Go ahead, Rina. Yeah.
I have one more question from the audience, and this relates maybe to employees that are part of a risk group, right? So have you taken any specific action with employees that are part of a risk group? And risk group means like elderly people, patients with a lower immune system. So first of all, how did you deal with that particular group? Does anyone has any ideas or examples of that, or did you not take any specific action?
At AIA, so we asked a female staff who are pregnant, asking them do not come to work. So ask them stay home. So actually, in a tone that they don't have choice, they have to stay home, because we do not want them to come back to office just in case if they are affected. We do not want to see that.
Johnny, you wanted to add something there?
Very similar to Florence. Yes, exactly. And then also others who have lower immune system have a medical history. We advise them not to come into the office through shifts, and then also there are situations where you have people in higher risk. Sometimes it's not immediate or personal physical risk. Sometimes it could be people who are traveling that are more exposed, or people who are in closer to epicenter. So we're monitoring a couple of lists of high risk people and have different measures.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I
have one. Can I address one more, because the one person of the audience actually says this looks very and sounds very opportunistic, very optimistic from the panel, but it seems highly unrealistic when you view the carnage that is happening globally. So my question really is, with a likely shift to nationalism and closed borders, how will this actually impact international teams? And maybe another question from the audience was also, did you actually downsize your teams? Because that's also a big question that lots of management teams are currently discussing. So two questions, actually, more on the negative side of the impact.
Just about that first, about the negative sides, and I agree. Although I think there is room for improvement and opportunities, I agree that it could get a lot worse before it gets better, and especially some of the policies that we're seeing overseas may not necessarily be reflective of what is needed. For example, the masking policy in many places. So you're right. Who's ever asking this question, it could get much worse. And I've also heard of a lot of companies globally, because of this, are planning and making lists of who to lay off. That is true. How that pertains for international business, it's basically shut down travel. I can't get to Europe. I can't get to the U.S. And nor do I want to, clearly. But that means we can't engage in certain transactions or see certain clients or do certain things that we would otherwise need to do. As far as when do we think this could come to an end? As they're saying about the herd immunity, getting some 60 or 70% of people inoculated would be that place. So although it could be quite bad in the short term, if we all work together to limit the spread, eventually this will pass like anything else. So I think the long term is still quite good. This will be like any other virus that comes and goes. So yes, potentially short term trouble, but long term, this will definitely, and we'll all get through this.
And maybe the final question that Rina asked, so are there downsizes in your teams? Please answer briefly, and then Rina can end the webinar with a few last conclusions and thoughts. So Sue, are there downsizes with your team? You're on mute, Sue. Sorry, you're on mute. Yeah.
Yes, fortunately, we have not, but of course we are preparing just in case for a list of people that we could look at. Usually those are people that just joined the company, still within probation. We also have clients that have asked for their staff to go 30 to 50% discount on their salary. And that's a trend that we're seeing for a certain period of time until things become normal.
Florence?
For our company so we don't cut down our current workforce, but we have already communicated with all the employees so we will reduce the headcount by natural attrition.
Natural attrition.
Yes.
Okay. Johnny, 10 seconds, your remarks?
Not at the moment. Of course, we're planning by also looking at different groups of people to see if this crisis continue, if the rebound it doesn't come as we are looking at the current moment. Of course, as business leaders, we need to have those contingency plans, but not at the moment.
Okay. Thanks for being open, everyone. Rina, yeah, we're actually out of time. Maybe you can finalize with a few thoughts that you wrote down.
Yeah, I think if we would run our technology on the words that were being said, one word that came back a lot was humane. So I think, panic is human, be human. We're all affected. We all have kids. We all have to get back to this new normal. So I think being humane was a key word that stood out. Inform yourself, so curating information, like Johnny said, actually bi-weekly formal, informal communication, practical things like town hall meetings where people would come in every hour after lunch are great practical ideas to keep people engaged. I see also this new app that Robin talked about curating or helping to understand the sentiment of what is going on. So to get information on which you can act, very important. Even in this downturn, I hear a lot of optimism. So I heard things like mastering digital skills. So this might actually also kind of help people to master new skills and to get used to home work. Yes, it will impact sales. It will impact performance. Numbers that were mentioned were minus 30, 20%. We're not back at normal, but I think in Asia you see slowly an uptake. And I think as a closing remark, embrace the new.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Sorry, someone wanted to add? No. Well, thank you everyone for joining this webinar. We are also learning and trying new things in these hectic times, so we had to skip a few questions, and we are a bit over time now. But I'm very grateful that for our panel members to join us. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Johnny. And thank you, Nicolene, behind the scenes. Nicolene listened in, and she will share more details on her takeaways and some actions with all her PwC knowledge. And as a follow-up, because of the high demand for this type of information, we will organize 2 more webinars, one next week together with PwC, and one the week after for the Latin American community together with FESA Group. Robin, thank you as well. Rina, thanks for joining. You want to say one last thing?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Rina.
Because unfortunately, I couldn't address all the questions that we received. So I hope that the audience, or sorry, the panel is willing to answer the remaining questions so that we can actually feedback that information to the people that listened in. And second, a kind reminder to all of us, because data is key and information, there is a questionnaire that we shared. Would you all be willing to fill that out so we can share that information anonymously across this group? Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rina. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye and good luck and be safe and optimistic. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.